Hello, my name is Anastasia Fress, and this presentation will cover my capstone project for the summer of 2019, graduation requirement in CUIN with an emphasis in STEM for the Lead Houston Fellowship. The study follows my students and my journey in implementing new technology in the classroom. Last school year, I applied and was one of 10 teachers who received a new interactive whiteboard. Also, all 9th grade core teachers received a Chromebook cart for students to be one-on-one in the classroom. With this initiative, teachers were asked to use the Chromebooks 80% of the instructional day, and so finding appropriate online programs and manipulatives was extremely important. The interactive whiteboard was used daily, and the students used their Chromebooks for online assignments, as well as the program Nearpod and Pearson Math Excel. However, this study focused on the program GeoGebra. Although GeoGebra is not a new program, I had never used it specifically to teach triangle congruence postulates while using the virtual manipulatives that GeoGebra offers. Because the school was requiring the use of Chromebooks 80% of the time in class, it was important to utilize online programs. Another part of the study was to determine how students felt about technology use in the classroom. Because the 9th graders were using the Chromebooks in all of their core classes, the students were well trained in how to use them for a multitude of online programs. Many, however, had not used GeoGebra in the past, so this was new to both me and my students. The importance of the study stemmed from the research I had been reading in my coursework in the graduate program. Some major themes that we discussed in class were teachers' resistance to change or trying new things, and especially using new technology with fidelity. It was important for me to find online programs and manipulatives that helped the students take responsibility for their learning and required them to perform research and look for patterns rather than being given the information through lecture and notes. For personal reasons, I chose the unit on triangle congruence postulates, which are SSS, SAS, SAA, ASA, and HL. I've noticed that in the past years of teaching geometry, this concept never comes easily to students, and they were not able to relate the postulates to other topics such as quadrilaterals later in the school year. I had also been teaching this concept by telling the students the postulates and having them practice what I taught them on assignments without allowing students to figure things out for themselves. In researching GeoGebra, I realized that there was limited information on the benefits of using it as a virtual manipulative in the classroom, even though there was a plethora of research that stated virtual manipulatives were helpful to students and teachers in that they were less time-consuming to create and more accurate for students in order to see the patterns needed to discover important properties. GeoGebra did have a lot of teacher-created discovery-based lessons on triangle congruence, so it was simple to find the resources I was looking for that, and I felt it would work best for this unit. With those important aspects in mind, I chose the 4 themes you see here to dig deeper into the research in order to begin my study. What I found on teachers integrating technology was that there was typically low participation from teachers receiving training on and implementing new tools and programs. The lack of teacher experience as well as little to no feedback given on the new tools and programs contributed to the low participation. I wanted to ensure this did not occur in my study. However, there was much more I could have and should have done in order for things to run more smoothly, such as checking the program's compatibility with the new interactive whiteboard. Other areas of improvement will be discussed in my conclusion. As I mentioned, I did find plenty of research to support the use of virtual manipulatives, and I chose GeoGebra because it is well established and many teachers utilize it in their classrooms. I had heard of the program, and after searching for lessons, I determined this would be a good program for students to use to find patterns in congruent triangles. Students were to use the program to manipulate pre-made triangles by changing their sides and angles and determining whether the new triangle was congruent to the original. The final theme arose as the unit was underway when I began hearing student conversations about the use of technology in their classes. Many of them complained when using the Chromebooks and made it seem like they saw it as a hassle. Some students even shared they would prefer to do more hands-on and pencil-paper assignments. In this 21st century world, I was surprised by these remarks, as I know students are extremely reliant and even addicted to their smartphones and tablet devices and that instant gratification. However, much of the research about using technology did state that students felt it was helpful and they enjoyed it in the classrooms. One study did result in students saying they like technology in moderation and would prefer some assignments, including assessments, be done on paper rather than on the computers. The study was done at a Title I school, and students had school-provided Chromebooks and computers to use in the classroom. My 5 ninth grade pre-AP geometry classes had an almost 50-50 ratio of boys and girls, and some students were English language learners. The unit on triangle congruence took a total of 4 1.5-hour class periods to complete. It started with a review on classifying triangles, which used GeoGebra to guide the students to different types of triangles. This is how students gained familiarity with using the program before having to complete the discovery lesson on triangle congruence. A pre and post survey and assessment were administered. The survey asked them about their attitudes toward technology in the classroom, such as whether they find the use of technology as an important tool for research and discovering new information on their own. It also asked them about their knowledge and experience with several online programs, including GeoGebra. 90% of students determined that technology in the classroom is important and they enjoy using online programs, but most claim to have never used the program GeoGebra on the pre-survey. The assessment was given at the beginning and end of the unit and had 10 multiple choice questions about triangle congruence postulates. The choices also required students to justify their answers, which was important to see whether students actually grasped the concepts being covered. The assessment score average went from 40% passing with a 70% or higher to 68% passing. The 48% passing rate on the pre-assessment was mostly due to students guessing. They were made aware that their score would not be a grade and was only being used to show growth in their knowledge of triangle congruence. Although 68% passing is lower than I had expected, a 28% increase seemed to determine that students were no longer guessing and were understanding the postulates on a higher level. Interestingly, the post-survey showed an 8% decrease in students' views of the importance of technology in the classroom. I attribute this to the overuse of technology as part of the 9th grade initiative of using technology for 80% of the instructional day. As the literature previously mentioned, students prefer technology use in moderation. The post-survey also included several open-ended questions asking about students' experiences on GeoGebra, and the majority of those responsive were positive. One student stated, "I like that it has so many options, like grids, for example, and it just makes me better at geometry." Another wrote, "You make your own triangles and it's a better way to find what you're looking for when you are the one making it." This supports the fact that my method of teaching this unit previously was flawed by giving the information through lecture and notes. There were a few students who shared their negative experiences with GeoGebra, but the majority of those responses on the post-survey had to do with the lack of training on how to use the program. They shared their frustrations with not being able to get accurate measurements, and that may have been due to the smaller screen of the Chromebook. The negative feedback that was received certainly attributed to a lack of training on both the teacher's part and the students. If the unit were to be retaught, more time must be dedicated to showing students how to operate the program before asking them to use it for a discovery-based lesson. When testing out the program on my classroom computer, I continued to find more helpful hints for the students. However, when demonstrating some of those on the interactive whiteboard, I realized that not all of the GeoGebra lessons were compatible with the whiteboard programs, so I wasn't able to show the class as a whole. Instead, I had to troubleshoot with each student individually, which was time-consuming and not as effective. There did not seem to be any harm in using the virtual manipulative as opposed to hands-on lessons that I've done in the past. In fact, once most students got the hang of how to use GeoGebra, they were able to get more accurate information from the program and picked up on the properties of the postulates at the same speed or faster than I've seen in the past when using paper and pencil. They also started working in partners to help each other with not only how to use the program, but in understanding the patterns they were seeing. The discourse that occurred during this unit was powerful, and students were starting to use the names of the postulates without me having to tell them. It was also much easier and less time-consuming for me as the teacher to plan this unit and create the resources needed for each student. As far as students using GeoGebra to discover the postulates on their own, I believe the overall experience was a positive. Yes, there were some frustrations that students weren't able to work the program as well as I had initially imagined, but as their capabilities grew, they used the program and it was much more meaningful compared to just giving them the postulates to memorize. The collaboration that occurred naturally was something I hadn't seen when giving them postulates as a lecture with notes. I could also attribute some of the frustration occurring due to students' prior schooling experience. Freire used the term banking education to mean teachers just deposit information for students to memorize and use on a test, then forget. This seemed to describe the way I had been teaching the postulates in the past, and the way students were expecting to be taught. It was especially the case when I had gotten behind due to losing school days. The fact that this lesson took 4 class periods may seem like a lot, but in the end I feel like it allowed students to take ownership of their learning. They determined how the postulates worked on their own, so it will be hopefully more memorable to them in the future. I felt students recalled the information faster with a better understanding, which limited the amount of time needed to review the postulates. So overall, it was a time-saving unit. And 4 days seemed to be enough time for students to understand the postulates, which was the intention of the study. In our professional seminar courses, we covered a variety of important themes in the educational system. For best practices, we delved into the importance of teachers making the time to pre-plan and post-plan or reflect. Both of these came into play as I mentioned that planning time was minimal in using virtual manipulatives in GeoGebra versus hands-on activities. However, as I've reflected, improvements could have been made in my training if the program and checking compatibility with the other technology tools in the classroom. This plays into the technology seminar where we discuss using technology tools that have a greater impact for students. Educators should not just use technology tool to meet an 80% requirement from a school district they work for, just so they can say they've used it. It should be helpful in student learning and improve their understanding. Lastly, in the social justice seminar, a large theme was about equity in the classroom. This was met by this study by the school providing the necessary technology in the classroom. The study couldn't have been done without each student having a Chromebook or computer to work on. Here are the items I have referenced in this presentation, and you can find more in more detail in my capstone paper. Thank you.